Dear colleagues, we are starting our session. Let me start our session of the Dissertation Council on the defense of the dissertation of Oksana Arutiunian on to seek the degree of candidate of sciences and political science, and that's political. The specialty is 23004, political problems of international relations, global and regional development, and the topic of the dissertation is the EU-Armenian relations in the context of Eastern Partnership. By the Act of St. Petersburg State University, dated 10th of July 2018, I, Valery Nikolaevich Konashev, Doctor of Political Science, Professor of the Faculty of International Relations, St. Petersburg State University, was appointed Chairman of this Distinction Council. I would like to introduce my colleagues, members of the Council. These include Andrei Vladimirovich Taropygin, Doctor of Political Sciences, Northwestern Institute, branch of the Russian Academy of Economy and Civil Service with the President of the Russian Federation, Zainab Zelekhanova Bakhturidze, Doctor of Political Science, St. Petersburg Polytechnic University, named after Peter the Great, and also in remote mode we have Andrei Stanislavich Makarichev, Doctor of Historical Sciences, Professor of Tartu University, Estonia, and Natalia Valerievna Yermolina, Doctor of Political Science, Professor of the Faculty of International Relations, St. Petersburg State University. Before we start, I would like to emphasize that according to the federal law dated 2308-1991 on science and state scientific and technical policy, St. Petersburg State University was received the right to grant its own degrees independently, and the relevant act on conferring academic degrees in St. Petersburg State University was published on the 1st of September 2016, number 6821/1. Therefore, the Council is entitled to take decisions if not less than 2/3 of the Dissertation Council membership are present. We have 5 members, and we have everybody present, including those who are in remote regime, remote mode, participating. We have audiovisual contact. And so the protocol. First, we have a short presentation of the Chairman of the Council on the paperwork that was submitted. 5 minutes, and then there will be a short presentation of the defendant seeking the academic degree, 15 minutes. Then questions to the defendant covering issues that were covered in the presentation, and answers of the defendant, and then all the reviews will be read out, and then all members of the Dissertation Council. First, the external reviews were read out, and then members of the Dissertation Council read out their own reviews. 10 minutes per speaker, and then the chairman also reads out his or her review, and then the defendant has 15 minutes to answer questions and comments of the Dissertation Council members. And then there's open discussion. Anyone willing to speak up has the right to do that. After that, we have the The academic advisor of the defendant will have 3 minutes to speak. Then 5 minutes before the open voting procedure will be allocated to deliberation, where the broadcast is going to be terminated, and then the open voting takes place. Then the decision is taken. And the concluding statement from the defendant. And I hope that all members of the Dissertation Council and the audience have switched off their mobile telephones. And I would like to say that simultaneous interpretation from Russian to English, and if needed, English to Russian is provided, and the Dissertation Council's work is broadcast online on St. Petersburg State University website. And so this is the first item, the dissertation of Oksana Arutiunian seeking an academic degree of candidate of political sciences in degree field 23004, political problems, international relations, global and regional development, on the topic EU Armenia relations in the context of Eastern Partnership, was accepted for defense on 10th of July 2018. The Dissertation Council was duly approved by the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg State University. The defendant submitted to the academic secretary of the university the following documents. First, a personal statement addressed to Rector St. Petersburg State University, Professor Kropichev, dated 20/04/2018. A review from the academic advisor, Alexander Anatolyevich Sergunin, Doctor of Political Science at the Faculty of International Relations. A list of publications that consists of 4 works that have been published by the peer-reviewed and approved list of publications by the Minister of Education, Russian Federation, then certificate that specifies that Oksana Arutiunian took a course in postgraduate study between 01/01/2010 to 13/08/2017 in the degree field 410601, and passed successfully such exams as political as international foreign language, history of philosophy of science, and degree field. All excellent marks. The diploma that specifies that the degree in the postgraduate degree is accrued, and the dissertation in Russian and English, both in soft copy and hard copy. You have any questions? If you have no questions, then we continue our procedure. We have 15 minutes from the defendant, please, covering the main issues of the dissertation. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear members of the Council, I would like to present to you a dissertation on the topic of the EU-Armenia relations in the context of Eastern Partnership. On May 7, 2009, the European Union's Eastern Partnership Program, which is one of the regional dimensions of the European neighborhood policy, was launched. 6 countries participate in the AIP: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and the Ukraine. Cooperation in the framework of this program is carried out in the political, trade, economic and energy spheres, as well as in the field of people's diplomacy. It was the EAP that determined the EU's relations with Armenia in subsequent years, which predetermined the need to consider them and the dissertation precisely in this context of this program. The relevance of the research topic is due to the several factors. First, the EAP program was initiated relatively recently, May 2009, and it continues to develop actively, which opens the way for its study, and for this reason causes a lot of research interest from Russian and foreign scholars. Secondly, the EAP is not only academic but also practical for the countries involved in this program, all located in the neighborhood of this region. So this program is given great attention both by Russian foreign policy institutions and by experts and analytical community, because the AP region is of strategic importance for our country. Thirdly, Armenia is a strategic partner of Russia. The development of close cooperation with Yerevan is one of the most important priorities of Moscow's policy in the post-Soviet space, especially in the light of the deterioration of relations with Georgia under the rule of Saakashvili and Ukraine from 2014 up to recently. Fourthly, the topic has acquired a special relevance in connection with the EAP summit, which took place in November 2017 in Brussels. It signed a new agreement between the EU and Armenia, and although Armenia made its choice in 2013 in favor of cooperation with Russia, refusing to sign an association agreement with the EU, further development of relations between Brussels and Yerevan deserves the closest attention on the part of all interested parties, including Russia, especially now when the transition to a parliamentary republic in Armenia culminated in a revolutionary change of power, which perhaps will lead to changes in the foreign policy sphere. The object of the study is the EU's relations with Armenia at the present stage. The subject of the study is the process of implementing various programs of Armenian-European cooperation. The purpose of the study is to reveal the main regularities, stages, and features of the development of EU-Armenia relations within the framework of the Eastern Partnership. To achieve this goal, the following task was set: study the history of EU-Armenia relations in the post-Soviet period, identification of the structural features of the Eastern Partnership, its main mechanisms and programs, analysis of the evolution of the EAP and its main stages of development, assessment of EU-Armenia relations in the political sphere and in particular in the process of reforming the system of governance in the country, analysis of Armenian-European cooperation in the field of economy and energy, study of the EU's interaction with Armenia within the framework of the fourth thematic platform of the EAP, contacts between people. The chronological scope of the study covers the period from 2009 to the present. The lower time limit is determined by the beginning of the EAP, and the upper one is by the last summit of the partnership, November 2017, at which the agreement between the EU and Armenia was signed, which was an institute in the relations. Theoretical and methodological basis of the study. The theoretical basis of the study is the liberal intergovernmental approach and the theory of interdependence. In addition to the theories aimed at analyzing European integration, the study also used theories that study non-Western integration models, in particular the institutional design of regional organizations, the concept of cooperation, cooperative hegemony. In the dissertation research, various methods were applied. The method of studying statistical data was used to analyze the dynamics in the economic research. A comparative historical method was used to study the different stages. Scientific novelty is in the following. The scientific novelty, first, the author developed her own periodization of the history of the EAP development, which includes 5 stages. Secondly, The novelty of the study also lies in the comprehensive study of the role that Armenia played in the formation and development of the EAP, as well as the reasons for Armenia's choice of the pro-Russian vector of its foreign policy. Thirdly, the author carried out a comprehensive analysis of Armenian EU relations, taking into account all four platforms of cooperation within the framework of the EAP. Fourth, the materials of the dissertation research shed light on how the EU and Russia use this soft power in their rivalry in the post-Soviet space. An evaluation is given to the effectiveness of soft power strategy of these two key players in Transcaucasia. Fifth, the author introduced into scientific jargon a number of original sources, documents, and statistical data of the EU, the EAP, and Armenia, including in Armenian. Its academic novelty is linked to its theoretical and practical significance. Theoretically, the results of the dissertation research provide a clear idea of the methods of regional strategy such influential actors in the world politics as the European Union and Russia. In addition, the study of EU and Russian policy towards the EAP member countries makes it possible to better understand the specifics of the interpretation of the concept of soft power by Brussels and Moscow, and also to understand the difference between their perceptions of this category in this original version. As for the practical significance of the work, the materials of the dissertation and the articles published on their basis can be used in the activities of Russian foreign policy and expert analytic institutions, as well as by teachers and students in the educational process in studying basic disciplines. Provisions to be defended, despite the fact that the EU signed an agreement on partnership and cooperation with Armenia in 1996. Active development of relations between them started only within the EAP program initiated by Brussels in 2009. Prior to that, Armenia's bilateral relations with the EU did not have a systematic character and developed fairly spontaneously and unevenly. The history of the EAP can be divided into 5 stages, which include the phase of formation, recovery, culmination, recession, and recent attempts to rejuvenate this program, which led to the emergence of the concept of partnership of different speeds. At different speeds. In the structural plan, the EAP involves relations between the EU and partner countries within the 4 thematic platforms and 5 flagship initiatives, which were later supplemented by 20 goals calculated until 2020. Armenia initially actively participated in most EAP programs, counting on substantial EU assistance and carrying out democratic reforms in the country, involving its socio-economic status, resolving the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, and ensuring its security. The result of Armenia's participation in the EAP was a certain democratic transformation of this country, manifested in the reform of the administrative and judicial systems, the development of civil society, and its participation in monitoring the ongoing economic transformations, and spanning programs of cooperation with the EU in education, science, and culture, and the liberalization of visa regimes between the EU and Armenia. The international and regional context has had a significant impact on the development of the EAP as a whole, as well as on Armenia's relations with the EU under this program. The Russian factor played an important and sometimes decisive role. Thus, the difficult economic and geopolitical situation of Armenia, the inability of or unwillingness of the EU to meet Yerevan's expectations of the EAP, Armenia's dependence on Russia in matters such as security, transport, supply of hydrocarbon energy, nuclear energy, etc., were the main reasons for its choice to further in favor of the cooperation with Russia. In addition, Moscow offered Yerevan much more favorable and equal conditions for cooperation than Brussels. 6. The key moment for relations between the European Union and Armenia was the refusal of Armenia in the autumn of 2013 to sign the association agreement with the EU. to which it had been preparing for several years, and the accession to the EAGE in 2015. Armenia's participation in the AP and in its provision in the previous form became impossible, which required the finding of adaptation options accessible for both Yerevan and Brussels. 7. Currently, the concept of the different speeds AP dominates in the AP dominates, where bilateral and not multilateral cooperation between the EU and the partners has come to the forefront. The beginning of a new stage of the EU-Armenia EAP relationship as a whole was the signing at the Brussels summit of 2017 of the agreement on comprehensive enhanced partnership between the EU and Armenia. The similar documents are planned with other EAP countries that have not signed the association agreements, which, according to Brussels, should raise the EAP to a new level and take it out of the impasse in which it appeared in 2013-2014. For Russia, this was a signal that the EU is not going to exclude the EAP from its foreign policy arsenal, and the rivalry between Brussels and Moscow in the post-Soviet space with the use of soft power will continue. Thank you very much for your cooperation, for your attention. Yes, is there everything? Yes. Colleagues, we have technical, because video and audio contact is lost with one of the members of the Session Council, so we need to take to improve that. Thank you very much. I can hear you and I can see you. We can hear you, but and the connection is continued. And the next item is questions to the defendant on the presentation we just heard. We'll have a discussion time further. So, any questions? Please. Need to use the microphone. Armenia is one of the few republics of the post-Soviet space which has become a parliamentary republic. Has it played any role? Has the partnership with the EU and the EAP program contributed to the decision of Armenia to become a republic? Parliamentary. The influence of the European Union is evident. The EU organized some twinning programs to help transition to this form of government, to the parliamentary republic, and the European Union doesn't deny this help. So yes, this help. This contribution was made. Any other questions? No questions, so therefore we continue. The reviews are going to be read out up to 10 minutes per review, and I would like to ask Natalia Valerievna Remina to start. Thank you very much. The dissertation is on a very relevant topic of the European Union and the EU strategy in the region. And the EU that sets the ties with their partner countries. Well, this comprehensive analysis is quite good. The analysis of the EU partnership is very important, and the work has a practical and theoretical significance. A few positive evaluations. The author is very consistent in describing the role of Armenia in this. Talks about uses the comparative analysis. The third, the goal and the objectives that are correctly formulated. The fourth, the work draws on a number of instruments, and this is EU partnership, including EU partnership. The author demonstrates erudition and also draws on a lot of sources in national and international literature. The sixth, the novelty of the dissertation is evident, and the author identifies a new stage. Well, an analysis is lacking of the Russian Federation and Russia cooperation in order to see the place of Russia in the partnership. And we have to talk about cooperation, about how Armenia is viewed in the Russian society, and probably the data that was presented in the dissertation needs updating. Well, on the whole, despite these comments and criticism, the dissertation of Arutiunian Oksana Arutiunian complies with the requirements of St. Petersburg State University on granting the SOA degree, and the author is entitled to this degree in political science. Thank you very much. Natalia Valerievna. Please answer. I agree with. Thank you very much for your review. I agree with the comment that to understand broadly the EU-Armenian partnership, we had to involve Russian security and external policy. Well, Armenian international security and defense strategy has been covered, and as far as the economic cooperation, Armenia, EU, and Russia, we have a comparative analysis of the Center of the Eurasian Cooperation and the Bank of Development, and also European Commission's review on the free trade partnership with the European Union. Although you were absolutely right, the economic data finished in 2014. Well, this was deliberate because I covered the EAP data, and after 2014, because Armenia refused to enter into closer economic ties with the European Union, and That's why I talk about the political cooperation with the European Union that survived, and the European Union has economic relations, but these economic relations are outside the scope of the thesis, because they're outside the scope of Eastern Partnership. As far as the European partnership effect on life in Armenia, well, the effect is controversial and it's not evident. The work, I emphasize that the results are achieved mostly in the economic sphere, because the participants are interested more in the economic effect. Well, Armenia is in the 4th place on the EP partnership effectiveness scale, ahead of Belarus and Azerbaijan. And I talk about it in the research, and the results of the Eastern Partnership are still evident, both political and the reform in political and judicial systems, and also NGO reforms, and education, culture and science, and therefore the maximal effects of Eastern Partnership has not been achieved, but some results are there. And as far as the references, well, the page that you quoted has some data on reference to a humanitarian fund, NGO fund. Oh, I just and therefore I had to probably duplicate this reference. You're quite right. First of all, the Bakhturidze, first of all, relevance is there of the dissertation. The work is well structured. The author demonstrates being abreast of the material, and the introduction material find its way to the conclusion. Methodology good methodology was used, and the results were verified. And Oksana Arutiunian used the literature in Romance languages, and also and that opened, and then also the visualization also helps, although the impression is totally positive. Some questions can be asked. International partnership research is not used to the best extent, and EU partnership countries have a network of think tanks that study this program, and some sources, some approaches that were declared were not really used. The liberalized research comparative approach was used, but the others weren't. The history of the EP was covered, but unfortunately was done out of touch with the main topic. There are some logical mistakes. I didn't understand why Chapter 3, that settled economic ties between the EU and Armenia, had a section of Armenian relations with Russia, and I think that the research will continue, and maybe it will be outside the scope of the research. How would you envisage this cooperation between the EU, Russia and Armenia? in the wake of 2017 agreement and the change of political regime. Although in Armenia, although these criticisms or of course have to be addressed, but the dissertation is definitely in compliance with the requirements of the St. Petersburg State University requirements on conferral of the third degree of candidate of political sciences, and the author is entitled to receive this degree. So thank you very much. Please, short answers. Thank you very much for your present review. As far as the critical, well, international research, I try to use as much international research. Unfortunately, Armenian authors are not represented much. European researchers, as far as the European researchers are concerned, the European Union and Armenia cooperation is not very well studied. Well, they cover either the Ukraine or Georgia due to their political situations, and where they emphasize that the partnership, Eastern Partnership, is very effective there. As far as the liberal intergovernmental approach is used more often than other approaches. But I wouldn't agree with your comment that other theories were not used. Soft power theory is utilized a lot. The theories that that cover not Western models of integrations are, of course, underused, but the European Union is dominating in the EU-Armenia partnership, and therefore I focused on this partnership from the perspective of EU theories. And this partnership is geared to the Armenian desire to receive integrity and defense, and the theory of cooperative hegemony helps to understand that in Chapter 3, the choice of Armenia in favor of Russia and cooperation with Russia. As far as the context, the cooperation between Russia and Armenia within the context of the Eastern Partnership, there are several reasons. The Eastern Partnership is important to view these relations with Russia because they determine a lot of it, and plus the EU Eurasian Union countries include 6 members, and therefore it's a quite multilateral cooperation agreement, and it cannot be overlooked. And as far as the reasons why Armenia chose Russia and why this paragraph is in Chapter 3 is not a mistake. Armenia chose not to sign an association agreement with the EU and the comprehensive free trade agreement in favor of the customs union, and this is the question that I focused on, and this has nothing to do with the other 3 spheres of the relations, because those relations were continued. And the last question, very interesting and very complicated in terms of predictions. The change of political regime was not easy, and it's prognosticate how Armenia-Russia relations will continue. I don't think these will be terminated, because Armenia is trying to build balanced relations between the two sides. But although we have quite a bit of strained relations between Armenia and Russia at the moment. Professor Toropygin Andrei Vladimirovich, please, I will give you the floor to continue. The dissertation topics is very relevant, especially in the current era, when the Eurasian Union is in such a dire straits, especially in relation to the attitude of Western countries to this organization. The dissertation that we're listening to is very original, and I need to emphasize that.
Комплексное изучение роли Армении в формировании и развитии 4 платформ.
Well, the 4 platforms of climatic relations. This is one of the economic relations. This is one of the key achievements of this dissertation, because the whole program, Eastern Partnership, is clearer and more understandable why this was all launched, and how Armenia has interacted with the European Union within the program. Well, the conclusions are non-controversial either. I think that this is a positive result, and it's based on the good choice of theoretical foundation. There's the liberal intergovernmental approach, institutional design of regional organization, cooperative hegemony approach. I also would like to say that the author uses a great array of data, and therefore we don't have a lot of blatant controversial statements. But I have some questions to clarify the opinion of the author on some issues. It was strange that the deep enhanced partnership was not defined better. It's just 1 page was allocated to. This is a reflection of the achieved, what has been achieved and what is coming in the relations between Armenia and the EU. I would like to also say that although this task has not been part of the scope of the dissertation, but still I need to clarify. The author says that in many directions there exists a cooperation avenue, is the harmonization of legislation, and the author deals with it again and again. And I will not quote where it said. So harmonization of the legislation, is it done in accordance of some principles, or, for example, regional principles? Is Armenia harmonizing its legislation with the EU legislation, or the Eurasian Defense Union, or the CIS? can we expect that Armenia will pull out of some of these unions in order to harmonize its legislation with the EU, for example, legislation? And the second one is the signing of the agreement has become a surprise for some experts, but it's very important. The country has retained a professional regime with the EU, and the agreement has a requirement of the shutting down of the nuclear power station, and there's also a stipulation that this agreement this agreement seeks not to enhance confrontation between the Eurasian bloc of former Soviet countries and the EU. The author writes that content analysis was used to analyze documentary evidence and event analysis to analyze concrete events, but the relevant materials that is referred to, that these chapters refer to, are not very persuasive. Maybe you can clarify this. Despite all these critical remarks, the dissertation of Arutiunian, Oksana Arutiunian, EU-Armenia relations in the context of Eastern Partnership is in full compliance with the requirements of St. Petersburg State University on the conferral of scientific academic degrees of candidate of political sciences, and the author of the dissertation is entitled to being to receive the sought degree in the degree field of 23004, Political Problems of International Relations, Global and Regional Development. Thank you very much for your review. You're right. The enhanced partnership agreement requires more attention, because this agreement is going to be signed with other Eastern Partnership countries that have not signed association agreements, but so in future I'm going to focus on it. As far as the text of the agreement follows the text of the association with EU agreement, and therefore I didn't quote and analyze it again. I just analyzed the features that differ from the association agreement, and I talked about as far as the effects, the judicial reforms, norms of the EU in technical assistance, and these features did not clash with the requirements of the former Soviet Union partnerships. As far as the examples of such cooperation within the EU, a lot of events took place, but after the twinning projects, but when Armenia decided to enter the Eurasian Economic Union, a strategy was adopted by the Armenian government that is funded by the Russian government, and there was a reform in the customs field as far as the how confrontation can be avoided between the countries, between the former Soviet Union and the EU countries. I agree with it. It does help Armenia to have a balanced position with between the EU and Russia. And this cooperation agreement allows Armenia to continue cooperating with the EU, and especially with those countries that have not signed association agreements with the EU either. The methods that were quoted were used to study the results of the summits of the Eastern Partnership member countries and to study the periodization of this cooperation. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Professor Makarychev Andrei Stanislavovich. Thank you very much for the possibility to participate in this interesting discussion. I will give you a short presentation. I will cut out the positive results and just proceed to some critical remarks. And I hope that I will receive some answers. Politically is one of the most relevant topics, especially in the context of recent events that took place in Armenia and the changes that are occurring there. But I would like to draw your attention to the academic part of the field. The thesis has some drawbacks or even quite bad conceptual drawbacks. Well, when we heard about the Eastern Partnership is understudied in the European Union countries, I think that is not true. European think tanks study this, study Armenia, although maybe sometimes in passing, but they do study. And unfortunately, some of the literature is just cited and not reviewed in terms of context or context that has been written on this subject. Some formulations are linguistically controversial. So what do we have? What do you mean by in-depth study? What more in-depth study of some sources? And so what difference it from a study? That was quite maybe empty phrase. As far as more serious matters, I think that a considerable drawback is the inability or unwillingness of the author to study the European as the combination of norms and legislations. Well, if references are there, but normativity is not really covered, because in this case we see that the European Partnership program is reduced to concrete projects and technical steps, but how normatively it's important is not revealed. As far as the and also the author takes a broad brush approach, and it leads to a duplication of research. I don't think that we can divide Armenian authors and European authors because a lot of Armenian researchers work in Europe, so this is not legitimate differentiation. As far as some programs to identify as one of the tasks on the task to identify concrete programs under the partnership. Well, they're specified in the partnership documents. What else can you identify? And some controversial thesis, somewhat controversial, is about an anti-Russian Russian a flavor of the partnership. Is more of a journalistic approach and hype, and I think it's not academic. And maybe I would like to see more discussion of why Russia was not invited. Well, I have some answers because Russia answered it yourself by refusing to join some partnership programs, and the second. The question is why the EU actually is bound to invite Russia, and in describing this situation, the author applies some cliched statements, and to characterize Armenia as a most strategic partner of Russia. But you cannot really an important one, yes, but not. It cannot be compared in status with China, for example. The author writes about the Armenian-Russian relations as the partnership of equals, but it's not true because Russia has a military base in Armenia, whereas Armenia doesn't have anything of this kind. And well, maybe metaphorically you can say that they're equal partners, but not in reality. Some statements are in limbo because they haven't been substantiated. For example, the partnership with association with the European Union could harm Armenia's relations with Iran. Well, I think, and then with the U.S. as well. I think as unsubstantiated, really. As far as theories are concerned, theories are listed quite successfully at the beginning, and then at the end the author refers to them again, but systematically they're not used in the text. One of the 7 defended provisions that require a theory to be applied. I think theoretically there's no discussion why an approach is chosen. For example, why post-colonial theory was not used, because it's widely used now for the post-Soviet Union space. The theory was born on the basis of the study of European Union cooperation, and Armenia has declined to participate. A liberal intergovernmental approach is still used, and it's quite controversial. And to characterize through the prism of liberal approaches to study Russian-Armenian relations is far-fetched. You have to use additional arguments to take a decision on whether conceptual this to evaluate the dissertation, but formally it complies with the requirements. Thank you very much for your comments. As far as the comment about a lot of publications on Eastern European Partnership, as I already mentioned in my answers to other reforms, in the Russian literature and international literature has a lot of works on the Eastern Partnership issues, but Armenia doesn't figure much there. As far as the small scope of the literature review, well, it's explained that because there's no scientific or academic school that schools that would differ in approaching this topic, and therefore in characterizing the literature, used thematic and subject matter principle, whereas you advocate research approach based differentiation. Content analysis is used for in-depth analysis of sources. I think that this analysis, this type of analysis, is very effective, and therefore we use that. As far as the normative force of the European Union, it's a very important category. The Eastern Partnership is designed to systemically transform the 6 member countries, but and the way that Brussels acted towards Armenia is covered throughout the work, and this approach is used really more in the neoliberal research in under critical works of viewing the European Union as a normative force transforming the Eastern partners. They criticize this role, and therefore I use the theory of soft power, and I think that the EU uses these partnership programs as soft power, and because for some countries, member countries don't view European values as the key products that it could get through this union. They view these partnerships as a very utilitarian way, as a way of getting assistance, and therefore some of these legislative components still stay on paper, and well, of course, I could focus more on the results of the programs for Armenia. Unfortunately, I view it as incomplete. Most tasks have not been achieved. I wanted to evaluate the current stage of the relationship between Brussels and Yerevan, but also look at it from a historical point of view. And the novelty of the work is in the fact that I highlighted the specificity of every stage, and my main idea is not to present how this partnership looks on paper and what what happens on paper, but what actually has happened in reality, and evaluate the effectiveness of the process. And from 2009, the goals of the partnership changed dramatically, and the fourth platforms were transformed, and concrete projects, instruments of funding these projects changed, and I traced the changes and tried to assess why that happened. As far as the your view that my position tended to support the conspiracy theory of pro-Russian conspiracy theory, and I tried to take an objective stand, and geographically, I saw that the Eastern Partnership first focused on Eastern European countries, and Russia was involved as well. But after the conflict with Georgia, Russia was excluded, and the European Union extended this partnership program, Eastern Partnership program, to the Caucasus region, and the EU viewed it as more of a punishment for Russia for this, and Russia viewed it didn't oppose this program, but it voiced concern that it shouldn't interfere with the cooperation relations between the post-Soviet countries. And we talk about integration in the post-Soviet space. Unfortunately, Brussels chose not to an exclusive excluding approach over an inclusive or complementary approach. And therefore it demanded on preferential revoking the preferential status from a partner that deals with Russia still, and since Armenia didn't see a lot of benefits from an association agreement with the EU, both Ukraine under Yanukovych and Armenia chose to sign an agreement with Russia instead. And there was, under Poroshenko, this conflict between Russia and the European Union intensified, and I don't see that if you look at it objectively, that the European Union is not to blame for the deterioration of relations with Russia. And as far as the new neighborhood initiative, Russia didn't like non-diversified approach to neighborhoods, and Russia wanted both Russia and other countries didn't like this non-differentiated approach, and therefore 4 common spaces were signed, and this is how these partnerships developed. As far as the equal partnership between Russia and Armenia, I agree with your opposition to the key strategic partner. Well, in terms of China and everybody, of course, this is you cannot compare Armenia with some of the other partners of Russia, but in the region, Armenia is the best ally of Russia, and I stand by the characterization of Armenia as the key strategic partner of Russia. And I don't want to compare international influence of different partners of Russia, but the importance in the region. And Armenia has not been treated as an unequal partner with Armenia, and Russia is not forcing Armenia to terminate its ties with other international partners or participation in other unions. Can I answer some questions that have not been voiced here? Yes, as far as the term that you oppose to the collapse of the Soviet Union, the dissolution of the Soviet Union, or the breaking of the Soviet Union, maybe it's more of a journalistic German, yes, but I still stand by this term, because the severing of the ties was so abrupt. And some former Soviet Union countries were in a better position than Armenia in the relations with Russia, because Armenia was the strongest hit economically after the breaking up of the Soviet Union, because it's a country where agriculture and the services sector of the economy dominate. As far as the statement as the potential harm of Armenia's rapprochement with European Union, the possible harms to the links with Iran, I would like to quote some data from Armenia's official sources that said that the cooperation with European Union could harm the energy supply from Iran and a couple of other sectors, and not, of course, comprehensive harm, but in some sectors, vivid harm too. As far as the superficial use of some theories and the process of this is a reiteration of some other reviews. Detailed analysis of these theories was not part of my task, and I just linked these theories to the research that's cited, but these theories were used in the in the thesis, in dissertation, both not only in the introduction and the conclusion. Flexible integration, complex interdependence, soft power, cooperative hegemony. I can quote some pages as parts of these theories were utilized. And I would disagree with you that some of my statements were banal and trivial, and I think that the defended provisions are important because they formulate what I'm writing about, and especially to make the subject matter clearer, not only to the adherents of these theories, but also to the opponents of these theories. And I think that this is not the stating of the obvious, but my regional research, and I hope I don't repeat the research of other scholars. And again, I would like to reiterate my thesis presents a comprehensive analysis of the partnerships between the EU and Armenia and Russia and Armenia. Thank you very much. There are no external reviews, and therefore we now would like to proceed to the chairman's review, my review. I would like to return to the relevance of this topic, and I think the most important point here is that most or even all post-Soviet countries have faced a difficult choice. All of them have traditionally had developed economic ties with Russia, but and the choice was to retain the pluses, but on the other hand, to enter into very attractive relations with the EU. But the fact of the matter is that this cooperation project between post-Soviet countries, from the point of view of Russia and the EU, have become politicized and jeopardized these cooperation projects. And the key here was to study this situation of choice and maybe make some conclusions and recommendations of how Russia should approach the former Soviet Union countries, and in terms of their cooperation agreements with the EU. As far as my impression of the work is quite positive. Just a few questions. I think the analysis of this Eastern Partnership in view of Armenia is quite balanced, and pluses and minuses for Armenia in this partnership are highlighted. Well, the author is objective. The positions of Eastern Partnership member states, and that led to this multi-speed scenario of cooperation. And an important conclusion of the research is that Armenia has managed to find a balanced way of cooperating on the one hand with the EU and on the other hand with Russia. This research avenue needs following up, and this experience of integration allows us to project it in the future, to think about programs, to look at these partnership programs not through the light of confrontation between Russia and the EU, but through cooperation. As far as the lack of sources from foreign literature, from the research literature, because it hasn't allowed maybe the author to understand in the best way how the EU views this situation and Armenia. I think the author should focus on that in future. Also, the author should clarify in more detail on the factors, on the domestic factors and external factors of why Armenia took this decision of turning away from the European Union and Russia. Maybe we should have a look at the public opinion of the diasporas, Armenian diasporas across the world. As maybe the author should have highlighted more in more detail the conclusions, and I want to see in them more detailed generalizations on the program of Eastern Partnership. We have to draw lessons of cooperating in the triangle of Armenia, the EU, and Russia to understand what prospects this partnership has. And I think that I can suggest, if I were the author, I would suggest Russia's position on how to build more harmonious relations in this triangle, not just Armenia, Armenia's position. And I think that there can be more things said about recommendations, but the research is in compliance with the requirements of St. Peter's State University on the conferral of Candidate of Sciences in Political Science, and the defendant, Oksana Arutiunian, is entitled to receive the sought degree. Thank you very much for your review. I agree with the fact that I haven't paid enough attention to foreign literature on this partnership. As far as in my defense, I would say that I wanted to keep the balance between the general characteristic of Eastern Partnership and the relationship, particularly between Armenia and the EU. And as I said, this cooperation is understudied. And of course, I agree with you that some factors should have been described or that contributed to the change of mind in Armenia, because first Armenia agreed to sign an association agreement with the EU and then changed its mind. And what happened, why it happened, I should have explained better. After 2018, the situation has again changed, and I have to study that. Although I should say that internal political factors did find examination in the paper. For example, in the last chapter, I talk about the role of the NGOs and also on the roles of the diasporas. Maybe I should have focused on this more, but I didn't think that it was the most decisive factor. And I think the issues in the energy sector and defense and the economic issues were of more importance. As far as the relations between Azerbaijan and Turkey were not touched, but the role of Iran was important. But also, I touched upon the relationship between Armenia and Georgia when I talked about the building of a railway, and I will draw conclusions and lessons from your comments and criticisms, and I will use them productively in my future work. I would just say that the research is original, and I stand by the fact that I did draw into the picture Russia as well as the EU. And from this moment, the floor is open for anyone willing to speak. Any comments or criticize or make a recommendation, please let me know.
Andrei Stanislavovich.
Andrei Stanislavovich would like to, well, I can say just if there's a discussion, well, somebody has to start it. My main argument is that this liberalized approach can shed light. The colonial the liberalized approach can be shed light on why the cooperation between the EU and Russia and Armenia didn't happen, but it cannot be applied to the relationship between Russia and Armenia, because it's based on the implies a transfer of political rights. I think that this cooperation is built on manipulation, using gas supply and military assistance, for example, to supply of military equipment, weapons to Azerbaijan, etc., and blackmail. And I think that I just don't understand how liberal intergovernmental approach can shed light on the nature of the Russia-Armenia relationship, where security issues and energy issues dominate. And I don't think that this approach can be corroborated with, can be complemented with soft power agreement. I think in the regional variant, the sources that the author quotes didn't have any soft power as such. I would like to support the defendant. It's a very important topic. It's very much politicized. The approaches of Russian authors can be in contradiction with the international authors' positions, and I think that the author took an objective stance, and therefore I would like to support this striving for objectiveness, fairness. The process of defense and how the way that Oksana Arutiunian answered questions strengthened my opinion that the defendant is worthy of the degree. I think that each of us views the work through the prism of their own experience, and each of us has his or her own view on the problem, and that they're being examined today. But the number of questions that have been asked shows that we have different opinions, and but on the other hand, the defendant could cope up with all the critical remarks and questions, and it shows that that the author can adjust to many opinions and is abreast of many opinions. And I think that the answers that we heard demonstrate that this is a very erudite researcher, and who is in charge of her field. Thank you very much. Anyone from the audience? Any questions or comments? No comments. Then I would like to comment as well. I think that today's discussion has touched two very important things. First of all, the dissertation is very relevant. Everybody is agreed on that. The second one is that the topic is very much politicized. This dictates or creates this complexity for academic discussion as well. I think that the author stays within the academic milieu, not siding with any political affiliation, and this was a merit. And also, another thing, in the context of the deterioration of relations between Russia and the West, expert dialogue is very important, and we saw today that how different discourses can clash, and the European discourse is presented to us, and it's very important. And I suggest that the defendant understand better and be informed better of the discursive power of the European Union. It's a very good turn of topic research, because if we get rid of everything else, there are different identities. Harmony materializes when they come close to each other. But the question is, who approaches the other? Whether Russia or Russia towards Europe, or Europe towards Russia. And this can be viewed through a discursive power. You have to use it in methodology and in the terminology, because this dialogue in the academic field could be more productive. And I think that overall the defendant has achieved the results that the goals that had set, and my overall view of the dissertation is very positive. If anyone wants to again make a comment within the common discussion, please raise your hand. And no takers. I would like the defendant to answer the comments that she heard in the open discussion period. I would like to thank everyone for your comments, and basically I have to answer the only question about applying the liberal intergovernmental approach. I think you are right. If we studied the European Union and Russia relations, we wouldn't be able to use this approach. But if we study the EU and Armenia relations, this method is applicable. Thank you very much. Then the academic advisor, Professor Sergunin, now has 3 minutes to speak. Dear Chairman, dear members of the Dissertation Council, members of the audience, because my review is in the file, just a few words about the background of this work and my assessment of the results. The idea was born when the Eastern Partnership was actually launched. Oksana joined the department, the faculty, and while she was working on this topic, the Eastern Partnership evolved, and therefore she is very well in the agenda. And I think that the work is well structured methodologically. Well, of course, there are some drawbacks in terms of literature review, and maybe because of not always good access to the sources, and maybe should have used electronic database access, but books are harder to get access to. Well, the work has academic relevance, research relevance, and I think that the author deserves the third degree. And we are starting our internal deliberation for 5 minutes. All members of the audience, please.
Я попрошу включить звуковое сопровождение.
I would like the broadcast to be switched on. Sorry. Has it been done? Yes, thank you very much. Then we continue our session. Oh, I'm putting forward a question on the decision on granting to grant or not to grant a degree, and verdict is taken if 2/3, more than half of the members of the Dissertation Council, but not fewer than 3 members have voted for this decision. So we, by name, please. Your opinion, yes. Irina Natalia Valerievna, your opinion, yes. It's in favor of granting the degree, yes. Bacterius is in yes, deserves. And my opinion as chairman, yes, positive. And colleagues and guests, all members of the Dissertation Council were present. 5 voted, 5 votes in favor, no votes against. So the decision to grant the Candidate of Sciences degree in the degree field 230004, Political Problems, International Relations, Global and Regional Development, is taken. The defendant has the concluding word. I would like to thank members of the Dissertation Council, my sincere gratitude to my academic advisor and my family who are watching this broadcast. Thank you very much. Colleagues, in conclusion, I would like to thank everybody present, and especially our Andrei Stelislaevich. That's I hope you will not refuse to participate in our future defenses. Thank you very much. The broadcast should be switched off.